Hi everybody. Welcome back to the video on my Storytime channel. So I'm continue reading the second book of Left Behind the Kids series, Second Chance. And I'm going to continue reading. Alright. Chapter 5, More Shocks. Lionel awoke terribly uncomfortable about an hour before dawn. Ryan provided him with a sleeping bag, but the Daly's backyard, despite its manicured appearance, was hard and bumpy anyway. His back was sore, his whole body ached from the long bike ride, and he was still sad. Lionel tried to pray. When he had been a phony, a kid in a Christian family who pretended to be like everyone else in the clan, it never surprised him that God seemed distant. He couldn't remember when God had seemed close. He knew that was because he had never become a true Christian, and that was also why he had been left behind. But now shouldn't be different. He knew God was real. He knew the Bible was true, and he knew for sure that when he had finally prayed to receive Christ, even though it was too late for him to be caught up together in the clouds with his family, to meet Christ, as the Bible put it, God truly heard him. He felt forgiven, and he was sure he was saved. But his grief over the loss of his parents, though they were in heaven and not dead, and his horror over what happened to Uncle Andre, plus the sheer exhaustion trying to figure out what to do next, had caught up with him. Whatever warm, fuzzy feeling he might have hoped he would go with this decision and had salvation had covered over his sense of regret and loss. And so he prayed, just like before. It seemed his prayers were bouncing off the ceiling, or in this case, the canvas roof of the tent. Lionel rolled onto his side and squinted at Ryan in the darkness. The little guy was sleeping soundly. At least he was sleeping deeply. Lionel had no idea whether it was really a sound sleep or not. What a horrible thing Ryan had been through. He didn't know what this is all about, but to him it had to look like something very spooky. It was one thing to be offered hope. To know you could still come to Christ and be saved for the future. But Ryan's parents had been killed, and certainly didn't seem to have been Christians. It was no wonder Ryan seemed angry, even angry with God. If all what had happened was true the way Bruce Barnes explained it, and Lionel knew it was, Ryan had to be drowning in confusion. One must think of a God who would allow his parents to die and leave him behind while Christians disappeared into heaven. Lionel's prayers at that point had been centered on himself, but now he found himself praying for other people. He knew it was hopeless to pray for something that already happened, but he couldn't help pleading with God to assure him that maybe, just maybe, Andre come to Christ where his murderer committed suicide. He even prayed the same thing for Ryan's parents. What is it possible for someone could have been telling Mr. Daly about the Christ just before the pilot of his plane disappeared, and could he have been saved just before they crashed? Lionel knew that was a long shot, and he could never know anyway, but he could hope, couldn't he? And as long as he was hoping, maybe Mrs. Daly had someone rush to her before she died and tell her about Jesus. Lionel leaned on his elbow. He knew he was hoping for too much. Quietly, he rolled over and stood, ducking to keep from hitting the top of the tent. He wanted to groan just like his father did for sitting or lying in the same position for too long. But Lionel didn't want to wake Ryan. And anyway, he wasn't a middle-aged man. He was 13 years old. There was no need to groan. He had simply overdone it, that was all. Lionel moved to the flap and began unzipping it. He heard Ryan grunt and move, so he stopped and waited. An inch at a time, he carefully opened the flap and moved outside into the cool dew. He wanted to go to the bathroom, but there was nothing about Ryan's house that scared him. In fact, he wished Ryan would get over his fears so they could enjoy a little more comfort. He knew he would sleep better in the house whether Ryan would or not. Lionel tiptoed out inside. After using the bathroom, he sat in the kitchen, staring at the photograph stuck to the refrigerator. Lionel hadn't known too many only children. Almost everybody knew at least one brother or sister, and most had more than that. Lionel said he would not have wanted to be an only child. Sure, there had to be advantages, but he would have missed knowing his older sister Clarice, the one he usually called Reese. If ever there was someone who really lived out her faith, it was Reese. His mother and dad had been good Christians too, but it's hard to see only the good side of your parents. His little brother and sister, Ronnie and Talia, had been great kids too, even though they usually had gone on his nerves. It was Clarice who almost made him a believer in time to be ready for the rapture. She hadn't known he was a Christian, of course. No one had except Andre. And where was Andre now? Clarice, with her sweet spirit and her prayer life, and the way her smile seemed to sum up her whole life, she had been the best example of Christian he knew. Maybe she had been too good an example. There had been times he knew he couldn't live up to her example, even if he had been a Christian. Now he knew how dumb he had been. He knew better. He knew he wasn't supposed to live up to anything. He was just supposed to trust Christ and be thankful for the gift of salvation, but it was a gift he had never received. Lionel noticed Mr. Daly's sales awards. Yeah, Lionel noticed Mr. Daly's sales awards. Clearly an ever there. Lionel noticed Mr. Daly's sales awards. Yeah, Lionel noticed Mr. Daly's sales awards. Those didn't mean much now. Ryan might have been proud of his dad, but whatever he had done, and however he had been rewarded, that hadn't helped him when the end came. Lionel moseyed back outside and began unzipping the tent flap again. He heard Ryan gasp, "Lionel, someone's trying to get in." "It's just me, Ryan. I was inside." Oh, you scared me. Sorry, I was just getting too close in here. I'm not going to be able to stand staying in this tent, Lionel, but I can't go into my house either. It's like a nightmare. I can't even force myself to go to the door. Does your house feel that way to you? Sort of. I think I'll get over it. Those clothes give me the creeps, but maybe if I just gather them up and put them away, it wouldn't be so bad. I think one night in this tent is good enough for me too. You want to just go into my place now? I was hoping you'd say that. It was still dark when Ryan and Lionel packed their stuff in backpacks, and rode off toward Lionel's. They both skidded to a stop 2 blocks from Lionel's house several minutes later, just as it came into view. A beat-up old car was parked out front next to a late model van, and men were moving in and out of the house. Who are they? Ryan asked. I have no idea, Lionel said, his heart thumping. Let's get closer without letting them see us. He and Ryan took a left and circled around the back way. I wonder if they're looters, Ryan whispered when he dismounted and came toward the house from the back. Robbing your house, Ryan said? That's happening a lot. I can't let them do it, Lionel said. There are a lot of them and only one of you. There are 2 of us, Ryan. Don't get me in on this. This isn't my fight. What are you now, a chicken? I would defend your house against looters. You want them to clean me out? What do I care? It's not my place. Some kind of a friend you are. I never said I was your friend, Lionel. Lionel stopped and stared at Ryan. What was this all of a sudden? Oh, I get it, he said. I'm fine as long as I'm keeping you company, giving you something to think about besides yourself and your parents. But as soon as I need you to help me a little, you're done with me. I'm only saying we just met, Lionel. Don't go thinking your best friend is going to be with you through everything. Believe me, Ryan, I'll never make that mistake again. Why don't you go right on home and stay in your tent until you're brave enough to go inside the house? To go into the house. Stop it. That's not fair. Face it, Ryan, you're a coward. We're gonna do, Lionel. Take on these guys by yourself? Looks like I might have to. This is my house. I can't let people walk off with their stuff. I'll stay here and be ready to call for help if you need it. Well, I sure know no one sneaks up behind you and says boo. Ryan crouched in the alley, shaking his head. Lionel crept toward the house. Just before dawn, Judd Thompson Jr. pulled into the trailer park where Vicky Byrne lived. It was a good thing that they had talked all night in the heavy stop-and-go traffic all the way from O'Hare to Mount Prospect, because she was sleeping now. Judd didn't have to wake her every directions to her place. He couldn't remember having been somewhere like this before. He had an uncle who had lived in a trailer when Judd was a very small boy, but his recollections of the place were vague. He remembered his uncle more than his uncle's trailer. He certainly didn't remember it being as run down as the ones in this park, and he would have been a scared little kid if he had seen the rough characters that he was seeing now. They were shirtless, tattooed, scowling, bearded men, and hard-looking women who appeared as they would just as soon smack you as look at you. One of the black leather-clad men stopped in front of Judd's car and slammed both palms on the hood. Where do you think you're going, boy? Judd did the brake and rolled his window down a couple of inches. He was so scared he could hardly speak. Fortunately, he didn't have to. Wait, Judd. Vicky said, roused by the noise. I know this guy. She leaned across Judd and rolled his window all the way down. What's going on, Vince? What's going on? He repeated. You don't know what's going on? Where you been? With a friend. Now what's up? Well, while we were sleeping, somebody came through here and looted and burned all the trailers when nobody was home. Some of the trailers are trashed, and some of them burned to the ground. What about ours? You don't want to know. Yes, I do. Now what? Burned, Vic. I'm sorry. You know, if we had seen anybody, we'd have killed them. I know you would. So where are your people? Disappeared, Vince. Vince stepped back and ran his head through his hair. Wow, no kidding. What about your brother up north? Gone too. You sure? Yup, totally. I'm the only one left. What do you make of this? What do you make of this, Vicky? You're not buying that this is all God's doing, are you? As a matter of fact, I am, Vince. Look all around. Look around. Look who's missing. What else could it be? I sure hope you're wrong. Hope I'm not. Can you get back there and see the trailer? Probably. There's not much to see. You sure you want to? I want to. Take it easy. Vince backed out of the way and waved Judd on. Let this guy through, Vince hollered. Leave this car alone. It's Vicky and a friend. As Judd carefully maneuvered his way through the water and mud and debris, people along the asphalt drive and walkways approached the car with sad faces and sorrowful comments to Vicky. We're sorry, sweetheart, they said. You can stay with us. Call us. Come for dinner. We'll help you. Vicky waved her thanks to each person and showed Judd where to drive. When what was left of the Byrne family trailer came into view, she gasped. Judd couldn't even make out the color of the accents of the trim. The trailer was just a pile of twisted, smoking, blistered metal now. Its tires were flat and melted, only the stabilizing bar and bricks still recognizable. Vicky lowered her head and sobbed as the crowd that crowded around the trailer slowly moved away, seeming to Judd to want to leave Vicky to her own grief. He had heard her story. He knew she would not have felt any emotional attachment to this place before. But what must it now represent for her? She had grown up here, rebelled against her parents here, broken their curfew here. She had learned to smoke and drink and run with the bad crowd. And though she had hated it, she had seen her parents and her brother and sister come to Christ in this little home. Now they were gone, she was alone, and the trailer was no more. At least Judd thought she knows the truth now. So yeah, that's chapter 4 of chapter 5 of the second book Left Behind the Kids series, Second Chance. More shocks. And yeah, take care everybody. Another review from my Storytime channel.